y'all, my name is Will. I'm here today to give you a poi tutorial on contact poi, folding lines, combining them with snakes and tracers with this pattern that I stole from Wyatt Davis, and how this simple, almost drill-like sequence becomes the basis for a number of different patterns, and honestly starts to act as the fundamental building blocks of a much larger puzzle that gives us a cohesive contact poi folding line framework, which allows us to do a lot of funky things. Some of them are easier than others, but it's all a progression. It all builds. So obviously you want to be very comfortable with folding lines and contact rolls. So there's the basic outer roll, basic inner roll. You want to be able to start those from odd positions, tosses, anti-tosses. This swap is very important. I do it a lot of time from these 1.5s. This is where I initiate a lot of things. So this will be a very important position later on. So, at its heart, there's two different things going on. From Sun Chasing Sun, these shoulder reels, if we just cut the top part in half, this is 1/2 the pattern. So, doing this same motion with one hand and doing a folding line with the other. Now, combining it this way looks fairly unaesthetic. It's just an outside to inside folding line back to back with this bump shoulder reel. But when we start alternating which hand is doing the contact roll and which is doing the shoulder reel, we get this nice pretty pattern, which I very much stole from Wyatt Davis. So I frequently call these Wyatt Davis folding lines, Wyatt Davis rolls. So I took that initial pattern and flipped it inside out. So instead of Wyatt's out to in roll, we turn it on its head and start to do in to out. And it has that same catch release roll while that transition is happening. And you can also do it instead of catching and holding into a whatever, you do this quick release flick, and you can do it this way. And it loses a bit of visual similarity to Wyatt's original pattern, but it also requires a lot of versatility. So pattern 1, which I like to get into from Chasing the Sun, you should know that when this half toss necessarily gets us into a different timing, and another half toss gets us back. So that's something to be aware of, and that's the reason this works, because one hand is going to continue on the original pattern, and the other will go into its majigger. But you can also start them from this 1.5 pendulum position. If you just start right here, you'll actually go into out, which is the number 2 pattern on my list. And in order to get to that original Wyatt Davis pattern, you have to ignore the front poi and follow the back poi. So, pendulum position. Oh, And you can actually do these continuously. And it's the same as doing those. So that's essentially what's happening, and then we're just turning that into a roll. And then if we go back to this thing that we're cutting in half, this weird in-between part of the patterns between pattern 1 and 2, if instead of constantly breaking that shoulder reel, we allow that shoulder reel, nope, you get into a split ops position if you don't also break that timing. And so you can start to combine them. And you have a split opposite moment and a split same 3-beat fishtail weave moment. So I very much use this pattern to drill my fishtail weaves because you start to be able to add on more and more pieces to the sequence. Like if you can get it through once, all right, you're stable, and now you can have another go at it. And if you feel that you're comfortable with your first round, you can start to go a second round and a third round. And you can use this to get more comfortable until you build up, as opposed to trying to go straight into like it's a lot more complicated. Important things to know are that it takes 2 beats to go in to out and only 1 to go out to in. 1, 2, 1. And same thing, 1, 2, 1. So that's why you get this thing where even though the inside pulley starts, inside starts first, outside finishes first. Yeah. Inside starts first and ends last, outside starts last and ends first. And you can somewhat see it when you're doing this pattern, but if you start cutting out all of the middle, ugh. So initiate on the inside, end on the outside. So 1 has 2 beats, 2 has 1 beat. If that makes any sense. So pattern 1, out to end Wyatt Davis rolls. Pattern 2, end out variant, which can have the catch and hold, or it can have the release. And then the continuous one-arm pattern that is used for switching between split opposites and together same, split same, split opposite, and split same. And there's a number of different ways to switch back and forth. And you start being able to add on extra pieces. Like you have that shoulder catch flick majigger that I'm doing, or you can straight up do it into a whatever you would call this toss. Gross. You know that toss, that anti-toss over the shoulder. And you want to start getting even more weird with it, you can start going. Which is actually more stable. That way. Ridiculous. There's a lot of weird things in there. There's also oh, that's how that ties in. So instead of bringing it to the outside every time, bring it in. And you get that position on the side. Which is where you release. And the strike zone on the catch is fucking ridiculously small. It's between two different lanes. And this way, not to mention the up and down on left and right, it's and I know that it's weird because I can get it, I swear, fuck you. I'm sorry, baby. But see how that extension is way higher. You can also start working behind the back catches with that, which ends up being honestly a little bit easier with wolf than wall playing if I'm not being a jackass. I recommend drilling that from hip reels, which I clearly have not done recently. Oh, okay, last pattern. Instead of carrying one through, if you actually let one break And so we end up in an opposites, then we get this fucking gross. Which has the weird effect of being split opposites while it's in motion and tog ops while it's in the air. Which is just fucking weird. If you're doing it right, there's a moment where they're both floating in the air and the handles, yeah, are going around the stationary balls in the split opposites. There is an inside version. It's a little bit weirder. If I was good at forwards, then I might have been able to do that. This is my favorite entrance to this pattern. And if it's done right, there's a pretty moment on the sides. Where the handles come together in tog ops. And if one was better, then they could catch it into a 2.1 hand.